Staying in Victoria, there's been a wonderful suggestion, depending on which side of the aisle on which you sit, that the Federal Liberal Party should intervene in the Victorian branch of the Liberal Party and take over. A number of senior Liberal figures have suggested this is potentially the way to solve all the issues we've seen with the Victorian Liberal Party in recent weeks, obviously, as we mentioned before. Moira Deeming was originally told she could no longer be part of the Liberal Party, but then that fell over because Pseudo didn't have the numbers. Then finally he got his way. It's been a total rabble. This is a mob that couldn't win the last election in Victoria. In fact, they gave an extra seat, or not necessarily they gave an extra seat, but the government gained an extra seat at the last state election in Victoria. They went from 55 to 56 seats. You know, Daniel Andrews has been Premier for more than 3,000 days and they can't even land a blow. There might be some merit to this because, in fact, the Federal Labor Party did this to the Labor Party in Victoria 3 years ago. In June 2020, they took control of the party, which was supposedly, according to members of the party, going to allow the militant left to gain complete control from the right. That's exactly what's happened. But what's it delivered? An ironclad, successful Labor Party. It's actually worked. Would it work in this case, though, if the Federal Liberal Party walked in and said to the Libs in Victoria, you're a rabble, you're buggering all of this up for us, we're going to take control? Or is it is the independence too baked into the Liberal Party for it to actually work? Because I suspect it is.
If the independence is that baked in, then you've got to accuse them of loving losing because they're going nowhere. I mean, you know, they've got some stuff going for them apart from an incompetent leader, terrible strategy and terrible policies. But other than that, there's a lot to work with in Victoria.
That's the issue. If the Feds step in, their main problem is the elected representatives in the House. So they can't kick them out. There's absolutely nothing you can do about that. So I'm just like, I don't see how it fixes any problems. Their problem, I think, was electing a leader. How anyone thinks Pseudo has any of what it would take to topple the political titan that is Dan Andrews. Here's the guy trying to answer the most basic question known to mankind. He can't do it.
Define a woman.
Well, it's an adult human female, but Neil, our laws have changed and attitudes are changing where, you know, there are people now who identify differently to their biological sex. And what I have always wanted is to respect that and include people.
By include people, Pseudo, you mean include men. Why don't you just say that? Oh, because you would sound utterly ridiculous, you spineless, gutless waste of space of an opposition leader. We can't get any opposition out of this guy, much less someone who could possibly have a legitimate face-off for Dan Andrews.
And that is the argument for an intervention, because someone at the very least, I know they haven't got too much to work with in terms of their parliamentarians. There are a handful of good parliamentarians in the Victorian Liberal Party, and I feel very sorry for them.
And they just got rid of one.
Indeed, I feel very sorry for them, it has to be said. But someone has to go in there and knock their heads together and say, come on, you mob, you've got to work this out. At this rate, Daniel Andrews will still be Premier in 20 years' time.
Well, Pseudo can't lay a glove on Daniel Andrews, but he's able to beat up on Liberal women, Moira Deeming, Renee Heath. But it's not just Pseudo. He's just the latest in a succession of lame Liberal Victorian leaders. So there's clearly a systemic problem there that goes well beyond just the current leader.
Yeah, quite right.